Hi everyone, I'm Ben Green. I'm a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Michigan, and I'll be talking today about the ethics of smart cities, drawing on my book, The Smart Enough City, which is available open access from MIT Press. So let's start with the definition of smart cities. And because this idea is often promulgated by technology companies, I think it's helpful to start with the definition by one of them. Cisco writes that by definition, smart cities are those that integrate information communications technology across 3 or more functional areas. More simply put, a smart city is one that combines traditional infrastructure, roads, buildings, and so on, with technology to enrich the lives of its citizens. So the smart city is really grounded in technology, with smart as this modifier that means applying technology, digital technology, to existing infrastructure or processes or devices, much in the same way that we have smartphones, smart homes, and even smart toasters. And so the smart city involves a wide range of different technologies. This includes sensors that are put in place and installed on different types of urban infrastructure, from trash cans to streetlights, self-driving cars. There are algorithms that can analyze or make predictions about patterns of what's happening in the city or what will potentially happen in the city based on analyzing data about what's been happening. And then finally, we have apps that connect residents to one another, or residents and city officials to one another, to create various types of civic engagement. And the smart city has become, over the last decade, one of the defining visions for the future of municipal governance and urban life, with support ranging from the White House, major technology companies, federal governments across the world, and various other coalitions and media outlets. Many cities have deployed or explored smart city projects and brand themselves based on their smart city initiatives. So the smart city is one of the core ways that many municipal governments are thinking about what the future of urban life and urban governance will look like. But as with any utopian vision with technology, it's important to scratch beneath the surface of these visions and ask several questions. In particular, who is behind these visions of smart cities? Are visions of smart cities achievable? Are visions of smart cities desirable? And what might be lost or harmed in the pursuit of smart cities? Answering these questions will help us identify some of the key harms and dangers that are associated with smart cities. All told, the seductive logic of smartness distorts our view of cities and subverts opportunities to more fully improve urban life. Instead of addressing the real issues that cities face, smart cities present novelty and poorly thought out solutions to poorly specified problems. Much of the issue of smart cities stems from the particular way in which social issues are recognized and defined. And I call the view that really drives smart cities technology goggles, or tech goggles, which is a way of seeing the world through the lens of technology, seeing every problem as a technology problem, or every problem is one where technology is equipped to provide the answer. And this comes not just from the particular methods and epistemologies of engineering disciplines, but also from technology companies who have a vested interest in convincing people that technology, and particularly their technology, is capable of providing valuable solutions to existing public problems. So tech goggles are really grounded in 2 central myths about the relationship between technology and social progress. First is the idea that technology drives social change, and second is the idea that technology provides neutral and objective solutions to social problems. And so the smart city appears to provide a way to avoid thorny issues of politics and policy and instead provide more straightforward, objective answers. As the former president of IBM once said, if the leaders of smarter city systems do share an ideology, it is this: we believe in a smarter way to get things done. But to the extent that smart cities revolutionize urban life, as is so often promised, it will be by transforming the landscape of urban policy and politics and power rather than by creating any sort of technological utopia. Reconstructing the foundations of urban life in the pursuit of smart cities will lead to cities that are superficially smart with lots of technology, but under the surface are rife with injustice and inequality. And I'll highlight two core examples of this. The first involves surveillance. A great deal of smart city efforts requires collecting data about what's happening in the city, which means also collecting data about the public or collecting video footage of what's happening in the city. And this information, although often presented as being used for benign purposes, can often have downstream uses that involve increasing surveillance and particularly increasing law enforcement surveillance of minorities. Several years ago, the city of San Diego pursued an effort to install sensors on all of its streetlights to create a smart streetlight system that could monitor traffic and environmental conditions. Several years down the line, these potential benefits had not been realized, yet the local police department had begun using the video footage in order to spy on protests, including Black Lives Matter protests. Once more information about the uses of these technologies for surveillance came out, local organizers came together and put in place efforts to prevent this type of downstream use of these technologies. Another major element of the power dynamics of smart cities involves privatization. Many smart city initiatives involve city governments working with private companies, where those companies are providing technology or providing services for those smart city efforts. A notable example of this type of public-private partnership came in Toronto, where for several years, the city of Toronto was partnering with Sidewalk Labs, an Alphabet company, in order to let Sidewalk Labs run the development of an existing sort of worn out Toronto neighborhood. So this effort, although there were concerns about privacy, there were even deeper concerns about privatization, where this partnership would have required handing over significant amounts of authority and decision-making power and resources over to Sidewalk Labs, instead of without those types of decisions being made by public authorities or democratic bodies. Pursuit of smart cities also involves pursuing narrow approaches to reforming existing social problems. Focusing on technology as a driver of progress narrows the space of possible actions and policies. Equating reform and innovation with technology stifles the potential for broader reform and innovation in policy terms. Many urban policy issues do require meaningful changes to institutions and public policies and regulation. Yet smart cities typically ignore those elements and focus merely on technology enhancement, simply greasing the wheels of existing systems, which in many cases are themselves fundamentally flawed and in need of change. This comes up, for instance, in the domain of mobility and transportation. Many cities are trying to find ways to reduce congestion and increase the mobility of people to get around the city. And many cities have therefore turned to self-driving cars as a potential solution that could enable anyone to get anywhere they wanted quickly without having to deal with congestion. Yet actually addressing these problems requires more structural changes involving investing in public transit and spurring more dense urban development rather than sprawl that requires driving to get everywhere in the city. Yet the promise of self-driving cars and automated vehicles has led many cities to neglect their investments in these types of transit or urban development initiatives, and instead focusing merely on how partnerships with self-driving car companies might be able to provide an easy way out of these larger, more structural urban planning and mobility challenges. So what all of this means is that we need to reject the idea of smart cities and turn instead to visions of what I call smart enough cities. Thinking about, rather than trying merely to be smart and chasing technology as an end in itself, cities need to be only smart enough to advance their social and policy goals. Where technology can play a role in pursuing those goals, it may be one tool to use alongside others. Yet in many cases, technology is not going to be an appropriate tool. And the idea of the smart enough city is to think about answering this question, smart enough for what? What sorts of outcomes and goals are we hoping to achieve? And to what extent can technology help us achieve those goals? So this means integrating technology into broader efforts for reform rather than treating the deployment and use of technology as an end in itself. I'll highlight 5 core principles that are essential to pursuing these visions of smart cities. Number 1, address complex policy problems rather than solve artificially simple ones. Number 2, implement technology to address social needs and advance policy. Number 3, prioritize innovative policy and program reforms above innovative technology. Number 4, ensure that technology's design and implementation promote democratic values. Number 5, develop capacities and processes for using data within municipal departments. And I'll highlight just 2 particular elements that are essential to pursuing these visions. The first is regulation, that it's important not just to think about how to develop technology, but also how we can provide methods of public oversight and accountability for that technology. This is what the ACLU has done in partnership with many local communities across the country, pursuing regulation in cities that would limit the ability for law enforcement agencies and other departments to pursue and use surveillance technology without proper regulations in place. And a second element involves infrastructure. It can be incredibly tempting often to think about all of the potential exciting possibilities of using data science and operational analytics to improve municipal governance, but none of that is even possible without thinking about, at a more infrastructural level, how do we collect the data? What sort of information do we have? Is it high quality? Is it accessible? And so on. And these sorts of more baseline understandings and uses of data are an essential prerequisite to pursuing any of the more exciting possibilities that often capture the attention of smart city acolytes. Before we can pursue those types of projects, we need to think about these questions of integration and infrastructure. Following these principles will help us pursue smart enough cities instead of smart cities, allowing us to integrate technology into more holistic visions of more democratic and equitable urban futures. Thank you.